Welcome back. If you are new to my channel, thanks for dropping in. My name is Candace Sanderson. I am a retired psychologist who lived most of my life by the principles of science. If I could not measure something with my physical senses, it did not exist. Something outside of the physical had to either be fantasy or delusion. Maybe it was wishful thinking, or just maybe it was pathology. You see, I viewed the world through the lens of my training as a psychologist. Trust only what you can see, hear, feel, taste, or smell. So imagine my surprise in August of 2013 when, on an early morning commute, I began with no forewarning to receive messages from the 5D, from beyond the veil, from that realm that many call spirit. But after my spontaneous opening, which you can read about in my books, I've had to do quite the pivot. And now I view the world through the lens of energy, vibrations, and frequencies. That's where Nikola Tesla said the secrets of the universe lie. He was not wrong. Today, I'm going to attempt to bridge those two worlds, the world of science with the not so science world. I'm calling this episode Trust but Verify. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. Years ago, former President Ronald Reagan brought that expression to the mainstream. Although he talked about it in political terms, I'm using that phrase in reference to spiritual experiences. Quite often, something might occur in meditations, dreams, or even the waking state for that matter, and we are so quick to discount it as coincidental, as haphazard. Even after all these years since my opening to the 5D, sometimes I will have such a profound experience that doubt raises its ugly head, and my ego steps in with questions. Am I making this up? Is this real? On one level, of course, I know I am not inventing the experience or the message, but when I can validate it, now that's rewarding. It is trusting through validation. In today's episode, I'm going to share some recent validations of some of these 5D experiences. I will show data that support the presence of some of those magical and mystical things that often occur in the 5D, like during the middle of a meditation. As a psychologist, these scientific validations still feed my soul. They make my heart sing. I absolutely love it. In February of 2023, I attended a program at Monroe Institute in Virginia called Discovery. And that is precisely what we did. We discovered what I once thought was undiscoverable. Those who follow me know that I am a big fan of Monroe Institute, that marvelous place outside Charlottesville, Virginia, where we can learn to expand our awareness, our consciousness, and actually dip our toes into that larger world of energy, that unseen world of spirit, the unknown. The Discovery program is led by Bob Holbrook. Now, Bob is also the genius behind the Institute's sound-based technology called Monroe Sound Science. Along with Bob, we worked with Judith Pennington and her crew from IAM, Institute for the Awakened Mind. I'll put links to those two websites in the description below, but they're easy to remember. monroeinstitute.org, institutefortheawakenedmind.com. But this discovery program is unique in several ways. First of all, it's limited to only 16 participants because of its intense nature. Now, it's not intense for us as the participants, but for those who have to monitor us. During our 6 days on campus, we are part of Monroe Institute's research to validate different states of expanded consciousness. In other words, Discovery is an experiential research program, and I was lucky enough to be one of those experiencers. But you can too, simply by registering for the program. If you go to Monroe Institute's website and read about Discovery, you'll see that it uses, quote, real-time EEG monitoring during out-of-body and remote viewing exercises. By the way, Discovery is the only known long-term, large-scale EEG monitoring study of psychic phenomena being conducted anywhere in the world that I know of. The meditation exercises during the program use Monroe sound science. Now, Monroe's originally sound-based technology used layers of binaural beats, but Monroe sound science is an upgrade from that. They've added several technological things such as spatial modulation to these original sounds. And the end result, it's great. It's perfection. But you can learn more about that on Monroe's website. The purpose of this episode is to simplify the process so you can better understand the program and what it does. I've heard so many people say, I can't meditate. It's just too hard. I can't sit still. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. If you use Monroe Sound Science, and by the way, they have an app called Expand. You can check that out, where you can hear these wonderful meditations. But when you use that sound-based technology, I've always said, this is the lazy person's way to meditate. You do not have to do anything. You just put on headphones, kick back, relax, and you let the sound frequencies do the work for you. It doesn't get any easier than that. Each discovery program offered by Monroe Institute is different. They build on analyzing the data from the previous programs. So each iteration of discovery gets better, more targeted as Bob Holbrook looks at the data from the most recent program and he tweaks the exercises. The result, the program progresses each and every time. When we listen to the meditations during discovery, we are hooked up to an EEG machine, and those results are displayed using the mind mirror system that is run and monitored by Judith Pennington and her group from IAM, the Institute for the Awakened Mind. We see in real time changes in our brain waves. Take a look at these beautiful color-coded graphs on your screen. You'll see the horizontal bar graphs on the right, but for those who prefer the same data in a line graph, take a look on the left. I'm going to focus on the bar graph. I think it's a little easier to understand and to see. In a few moments, I'll explain what these beautiful colors mean, and I'll give some simple, easy ways to remember the different brainwave states that we see in this mind mirror example. What excites me about this? We are generating verifiable data as we enter different states of expanded awareness during the meditations. If you doubt, stop and look. You'll see. It is real-time EEG results. When I saw these graphs, I had a better appreciation for the difference between the brain and the mind. The brain produces brain waves. That's true, of course. Yet those brain waves change in response to our minds. Our minds, not that organ inside our skull, but that apparatus that allows us to slip outside the world of physicality and explore. We do not do this physically. We do this with our minds, this internal device. Maybe it's an organ system, but it's something that we all possess. It is not that organ inside our skull. Don't believe that? Well, Think about what we do every night. We dream. We step outside the physical and into our soul, our spirit, our higher self, our energy body, however you want to name that, whatever you want to call it. But what happens during sleep is our quite often judgmental egos are quiet. So we just go with the flow and dream. We step into that beautiful world of energy. The discovery program makes me realize how important Judith's work is and how she sees this. Her website, Institute for the Awakened Mind, it's not Institute for the Awakened Brain, yet she's using that brain through EEG monitoring to bridge that gap, to show us the way using our minds. Okay, I'm digressing. So back to Discovery Program and trust but verify. In Discovery, we validate in every sense of the word. It is scientific validation using that real-time EEG brainwave monitoring. Now, before I go any further, let me give a couple of disclaimers. I am sharing my experiences as a participant, as a psychologist. This episode is not sponsored by Monroe Institute, nor by Judith Pennington. These represent my experiences and my attempts to explain some of the findings of the program in a very simple, easy to understand way. Some very simple examples. As a participant, we were hooked up to EEG electrodes each morning. We had trained observers, including Judith Pennington herself, who would monitor our results in real time using that mind mirror system. As they were collecting these brainwave data, we relaxed in these wonderful zero gravity chairs. The room lights were turned off, and with our over the ear headphones, we listened to Monroe Sound Science, and the fun began. Not only are we providing data for Monroe Institute's research, personally, we also benefited. As our monitors go over the results right after each meditation, we learn about what Judith calls landmarks that allow us to return to those states at will. I'm going to talk a little more about that later on. But let's get back to what the EEG through the mind mirror system does. It measures and records changes in the brain waves in a very easy to use and see visual pattern. The mind mirror system has many day-to-day applications, but for this episode, I'm giving just the basics, helping to simplify so we can better understand that correlation between brainwave states and states of consciousness, states of expanded awareness. Look how pretty and dynamic my brainwaves look. It's lovely. It's fascinating. But what the heck does all this mean and how can we use it? And if you're like me, even with my training as a psychologist, I don't remember the difference between the different brainwave states. But when preparing to attend Discovery, yeah, like nobody needs to study for it, but of course I did. It's in my nature. But what's also in my nature is to develop my own tricks to remember these patterns. And I'm going to share that with you. First of all, let's talk about those brainwave patterns. Again, I'm simplifying, but here goes. The EEG sensors measure two things, frequency and amplitude. The frequencies range from 0.5 to 100 hertz or cycles per second. We labeled the brain waves based on what frequency range they're in. As you look at some of the brainwave mirror recordings of my brainwaves, we're also having to deal with my technological skills or lack thereof. I had to crop some of the recordings so you don't really see the very top of the scan, but it does go up to 100. It's there. These are the brain waves that we measure during the program, and you'll see them listed from the fastest at the top to the slowest. See how fast gamma is at the top? Those gamma waves with the blue background versus the very slow waves of the delta at the bottom of the page with that orange background. These are the frequencies. The other EEG measure is amplitude. That's the strength or the power of the signals in our colorful bar graph. The amplitude is measured in microvolts. It's how far, how wide these color-coded bands go across the graph. Some of them are so wide, like this purple band at the bottom, that it runs off the screen. I have to move to the top of the screen to change the value of the screen so you can see it. But that's not really germane to the conversation. Just know that in this picture, those signals are literally off the charts. So this is the second measure of the EEG. It's the measurement of the power, the strength of the brain waves measured in microvolts. What does all this mean? Let's look at a graph from Judith's website. I'm going to make this very easy. Think of this episode as a mind mirror for dummies. It's the lazy way my brain interpreted all this stuff. But see this cute, bright picture? Look at the white outline. I don't know about you, but I see a little cartoon character, almost like an alien with a stovepipe hat, like what Abraham Lincoln used to wear. I use that outline to help me understand the brain waves. We're going to talk about gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Let's start at the top. We see a little gamma hat. Then we move down to the head, beta, followed by the arms, the green alpha arms, and then the blue belly of theta. And then we end with the purple feet or the foundation of delta. That gamma hat, those fast frequencies at the top of the scale are gray and hot pink. I don't even remember them by color. I just look at the stovepipe hat on his head. What is typically under a hat? Those frequencies we use for learning, memory, processing information. But think about this phrase, keep it under your hat. Those gamma frequencies are also associated with a deeper spiritual life that we do indeed often keep under our hats. We frequently keep these things private, very private. Now, those frequencies circle back, they circle down to couple and harmonize with the lower theta and delta frequencies. The end result of that, those gamma brain waves often translate to feelings of peace, of compassion, and some have even called this state spiritual ecstasy. Let's move down from that stovepipe hat to our little alien's head. We're looking at the head, beta, the waking state. I just named our little alien Roy. Remember Roy G. Biv, that memory trick we learned in elementary school so that we could memorize the colors of the rainbow? And the colors for beta, for the head, are Roy, red, orange, yellow. Beta is associated with conscious thought, logical thinking, not that deeper spiritual connection or the memory we saw under our gamma hats, but active, external, stimulating things that keep us focused. That makes sense because after all, this is Roy's beta head, and the head keeps us focused. It's often verbal in thought, like making a list or making a decision. But these frequencies also have a stimulating effect to keep us focused. In this state, that conscious mind is very active and very external. And we would not be in our heads unless our friend ego was involved, right? So we see all that being in our heads that often go with ego, panic, stress, anxiety, those random thoughts that spin in our brains like hamsters on a wheel. Yep, it's all in Roy's active beta head. Those frequencies that show his Roy signature colors of red, orange, and yellow. Now let's move down. G for green, we're moving to his arms. Roy G. Bibb's middle initial, G for green. But I go back to my childhood roots. When I think of alpha waves, I think of alfalfa, green alfalfa clover. Alfalfa, that makes me remember both the name and the color. I love this alpha state. Being Roy's middle initial, think of it as a connector from his hat and head above to the real him below. It's a bridge. And what's that powerful organ close to our arms? It's the heart. I see alpha as heart energy that connects us to the great beyond. And the color of the heart chakra is what? Yes, it's green. This green alpha state is a relaxed yet wakeful state. Like what occurs in meditation, it's where daydreaming takes place. We have increased sensory awareness and imagination. And like a green traffic light, green means go, it's these alpha frequencies that let us go from the awake conscious to the subconscious or unconscious mind. We go there anyway, but when we use alpha to do so, when we use alpha as a bridge, because alpha is wakeful, we pull those other states into wakefulness, into awareness. Keep your eyes on my green alpha arms. They are very prominent. And that's a good thing because alpha is that bridge to the subconscious. It is what helps me recall the experience. Alpha allows us to become aware of that wisdom and that insight from the next few states. Moving down from Roy's green alpha arms, we go to BB, the belly, the blue belly of theta. When I look at that, I see a periwinkle blue. And I checked in with Mrs. Google and asked what periwinkle represented. And Mrs. Google said it represents serenity, calmness, and peacefulness. And I thought that is absolutely perfect because the theta brain waves are strong during internal focus, like when we are in prayer or deep meditation or spiritual awareness. It's that magical state between wakefulness and sleep. It's the subconscious mind of long-term memory. Now, kids are in this state often, but as adults, no, not so much, unless we're sleeping. So now let's move down with our little alien Roy. We're moving from the blue belly of theta to the purple delta base. What is a delta? It's where a river meets the sea or the ocean. That's another befitting analogy. Delta is the purple color on our chart, and that is Roy's base, his feet, his foundation. We see lots of delta in infants and young children. Those are those very deep levels of relaxation and very restorative, healing, deep sleep. Delta is also our unconscious radar. It's always running in the background, looking out for us, protecting us. Delta is also where empathy rises, as well as psychic insights. Delta states occur when we are in our personal unconscious and like a river flowing into a larger body like an ocean. Delta is a door, DD, the delta door, to the greater universal awareness, universal consciousness. Beautiful things occur with delta. Creativity, insight, spirituality, dreaming sleep. It's also where we connect back to the stovepipe hat of gamma. So now you've met Roy. So let's recap real fast. Roy has a stovepipe gamma hat. Roy, red, orange, yellow. The beta head is when he's alert and his brain is active. His green alpha arms, his heart, bridges us to reach into the beautiful blue theta of peace and spiritual connection, and then that royal purple of delta, where we unite with universal consciousness. Delta also swings back to that deeper spiritual life that we often keep under our gamma hats. Now, when you see the moving dynamic graphs, I hope you'll understand them better. Take a look at Roy. Wouldn't it be great if our brain waves looked like this all the time? They don't. One participant in our discovery program said she did not have any alpha arms. And when you looked at her scan, she was right. She laughed and said that she looked like a T-Rex with tiny little dinosaur arms. And during her meditations, nothing happened. Well, let's stop right here. That's not totally true. She did have experiences during the meditations, but she did not remember them. Now, this is important because you can be in a meditative state and you think nothing happened. Something does happen, but perhaps you just don't remember it because you didn't have that delta flare that allowed you to bring your awareness into those states. Because without those alpha arms to bridge that unconscious experience into our waking state, we have what Monroe Institute calls clickouts, or maybe we even succumb to that deep, deep delta sleep. But it does not mean that we do not experience these theta and delta states during meditation. We just don't remember them. What is so cool about the Discovery program is that Judith teaches you how to find a landmark. I mentioned this earlier. When Judith told our class about the landmarks, I found myself nodding my head. My messengers refer to this as a bookmark. Years ago, they even gave me a neat little vision so that I would understand how bookmarks work. In the vision, I had an aerial view of a wheat field at night. There was a full moon, and that allowed me to look down at the field below. And I saw these stalks of wheat that were just gently blowing in the wind. And the next thing I knew, I saw a trail of footsteps diagonally crossing the field. There wasn't a person, just the footsteps. The messenger said that this vision represented our connection to the 5D, to spirit, to whatever you want to call it. And once we connect, first of all, we can find our way home. It was so clear to me. I just could see where the footprints had traveled because they had bent the wheat stalks. It was early in my channeling, and I think the messenger showed this to me because maybe I had a little fear about what if I can't return to my body? What if I can't get back to the 3D? Well, of course you can. Bob Monroe used to say, just wiggle your toes or something like that, and you'll be back in your body. In this vision, the messenger showed me that once that path is established, once I went from the 3D to the 5D, not only could I return home to 3D, but then I could also find my way back to them as well. And they told me that with each subsequent trip, that channel widens and deepens. The messenger said that I was establishing an electromagnetic path and that I could bookmark it to return. This is so very similar to Judith's landmarks. Once we go somewhere, we can return by following those landmarks. It's just like using a GPS and setting a pin. Using the mind mirror, meeting with our monitors, we can discover our landmarks when certain things occurred. These landmarks, these bookmarks, represent entrainment. That's a state when the brainwave patterns become entrained to other patterns. They synchronize with them. If you go to Monroe Institute's website, they share an example of entrainment using drum beats. If you listen to a drum beating 6 times per second, it causes our brain waves to follow that pattern. What happens next? Well, 6 beats a second, that's our theta brainwave. If you were hooked up to the mind mirror, you would see that periwinkle blue belly of theta. So when we return to a landmark, our brain waves entrain, they return to that state. Do you realize how significant this is? Judith's research verifies what I've learned directly from my 5D messengers from my guides. By using EEG data, Judith sees when we enter different evolved states. And by tagging that with what is occurring at the time in the meditation, she brings that information into the 3D by establishing a landmark that you can follow in the 5D in future meditations. That is just so cool. Let me share an example of a bookmark, a landmark that the messengers gave me years ago. During a meditation, I was in a profound state of bliss. How? I'd climbed a ladder of enlightenment that just appeared. It was so real. I could see the ladder. I could feel the ladder as I climbed. And with each step that I took, I was feeling more and more bliss. At the top of the ladder, I did this swan dive in slow motion, and I landed in the sea of consciousness that was pure divinity. At the time, I did not realize I could use this as a tool. I do now. So what I can do is, at will, I can, air quotes, pretend to use a ladder of enlightenment. I can find myself either climbing up the ladder, or I can even take the shortcut and stand on top of the ladder and do my swan dive. I can do that whenever I want to. My brain has entrained to those frequencies, to where I was when that ladder appeared to me and I climbed it. So when I do that swan dive, my brain waves are in the exact same state they were when this happened. Now, as a psychologist, I know something about the brain. It is not always that smart. After all, it does not differentiate between an event and the thoughts of an event. So just by thinking of that ladder and, air quotes, pretending that I see that ladder, my brain waves return to where they were when the event occurred. I had the marker, the bookmark, the landmark, and I return. Easy peasy. If we're clicking out or sleeping during a meditation, using the mind mirror, we can retrace our steps to where we were when we were not sleeping. In other words, where our alpha flares occurred, when those green arms on that graph extend. And we can learn how to return to that space. No more clickouts, no more falling asleep. We're building that alpha bridge to keep us awake. It's learning to extend those green alpha arms to keep awake and alert as we explore those deeper states of consciousness that are often associated with sleep, and in the case of Delta, very often deep sleep. Take a look at some of these patterns in my mind mirror scan. One thing that's clear to me is that I am always awake, but I didn't learn this. I didn't have to learn how to do this. It just spontaneously happened. But look at what we're doing with the Discovery Program. We are using this EEG technology to discover where our landmarks are and what they are. It's obviously more nuanced than that, but you get the picture. Judith began the Discovery Program by getting baseline data. And one thing she did was lead us through a guided meditation with those powerful signals of Monroe sound science in the background. She had us use our brains to think of something and then to think more about that something. It's pretending. It's that make believe state that children do every day when playing. We are purposefully engaging our brains when we think or we list specific qualities. But why did Judith have us do this? To stay alert. We're engaging the brain. As those Monroe sound science frequencies were bringing us into a deeper meditative state, using the brain, we've just tagged on wakefulness. We're bridging the gap. When we extend those alpha arms, it keeps us alert. We can use the imagery we developed during that exercise as a landmark. Let me give you another example. During one of the exercises in discovery, I found myself inside this really cool geometric shape. And within seconds, I had shot out into an out of body state and I was zooming across the cosmos. Was I really in an OBE? Was I really out of body or was I making this up? When we have an OBE, that brightly colored bar graph mirrors what we are experiencing in that meditative state. And our brainwave patterns shift to indicate on the mind mirror that I was indeed in an OBE state. I intentionally used that geometric shape as a landmark during the next exercise. I pictured it and I was immediately propelled back into the cosmos. The bookmark, the landmark worked, and I had the EEG graphs to prove that. We leave the discovery program with tools that help us expand beyond the physical, and we begin to gather more and more landmarks in our extraordinary explorations. Sound-based technology like Monroe Sound Science is so powerful when our brainwave patterns synchronize with those frequencies. But the discovery program puts us ahead of the game. Those landmarks give us a jump start on our voyages into the unknown. How do I know that? The mind mirror results bridge that gap between thinking and knowing, between the brain and the mind, between 3D and 5D. It was the verification I needed to fully trust what I was experiencing. After attending the discovery program and using Mind Mirror, I now have proof. This program provided that priceless validation that keeps my little ego quiet when it tells me it's not real, you're making this up. We have data, cold hard facts. Your brainwave patterns change, showing you that you've tapped into innate wisdom that is beyond the waking state. Those brain waves mirror our states of consciousness. Now, at this stage of my life, I am a seasoned meditator, and I see how my green alpha arms easily access those deeper realms and how it helps me remember this information. I can stay alert and retain that wisdom from deeper sources of consciousness. For me, the beauty of the discovery program using the mind mirror protocol, I have verified what I have come to trust over the years. So until next time, trust but verify. Know that explorations into the 5D are real and that we can tap into wisdom and knowledge that is outside of the 3D waking state. I wish to thank Judith Pennington and her associates at the Institute for the Awakened Mind and Bob Holbrook. You all have given us such a wonderful experience, and using a tool like the mind mirror, showing us, dare say, proving to us, as Bob Monroe used to say, that we are more than our physical bodies. Thank you for validating that our minds operate independently of our brains. It is that consciousness of the mind that connects us to all that is. Thank you. Feel free to like, subscribe, and all that stuff we do on social media. Until next time, remember to be kind to others and to yourself. Goodbye.